Alright, it's the start of the second day. We're just at the end of the first turn on the second day, so the end of turn 14 overall. It is 8:30 a.m. on the 2nd of July 1863, and this was a very busy start to the second day. I'll just show you the order of activations out here on the left. It started with Early shifting his division out across Rock Creek to the east, really just to occupy that ground. They're all very heavily reduced. Heath later joined them, filling in this gap over here, again also very heavily reduced. Elsewhere, Confederate artillery moved up on Seminary Ridge, McLaw's division and Hood's division moving out along here. They'll follow this trail out to the south. We had an important activation by Sickles' 3rd Corps, and they've moved up onto Spangler's Hill. This is very important defensive terrain. It is wooded, it is elevated, and there are 2 Union objective points there. And they managed to grab that just before Johnson could activate. And as a result, Johnson was forced to pull back because they don't send... it'd be very difficult fighting uphill in open terrain against that wooded terrain. So they've just pulled back away from Sickles' corps. Elsewhere, Hancock moving up along sort of the southern side of Cemetery Ridge. But the main, area of fighting was around Cemetery Ridge here in the northern end. We had Anderson's division moving in strength to try to secure this area. There was very bitter back and forth fighting throughout the lines here. And it was really just a case of the Confederates then sending in everything they could to hold those positions. So Pender's division activated shortly after that combat, and they sent Scales in here with just a brigade with 1 strength. Rhodes activated last, and he sent in O'Neill's brigade with 3. And over here we have Daniel's brigade with 6 minus 4, 2. So they're very weakly holding this, but just trying to get a foothold on that ridge. We've learned something valuable about this area. It is very difficult to secure the high ground. There's this modifier for fighting uphill. But once the Confederates have the ground, they're very easily pushed back because they're now occupying just open terrain. It's easy for the Union to hit them. Having said that, we did have some Union retreats. We had Cutler's brigade retreating, which forced another retreat, I think it was, because the Union brigades are so densely packed behind this area. These are all very weak brigades. Cutler is on 5 minus 3. He's at 2, 1. I think most of these are down to 1. 1 strength brigades, all filling this area here. And it's only the start of the second turn. So there's a long way to go before they can recover some of their strength points. Alright, as I said, it's the start of the second turn, 8:30 a.m. I'll report back soon. Alright, here we are at the end of the 15th turn, second turn for the second day. It's around 10 a.m. now. And the fighting around Cemetery Ridge has just been intense. So much back and forth. Just divisions being rushed in. Pender's division now back into fighting with Scales' brigade at 1 strength. O'Neill holds there with 2 strength. We've got Ramsew's brigade holding out here with 2 strength points. And then the Union is counterattacking the Iron Brigade. It's been sent in again with 1 strength remaining. Who's this? Muhlenberg? He's full strength. Slogan's call is this Candy with 5 minus 1, 4 strength. Trying to hit Ramseur from the side there. Most of these units have 1 strength left. They've really been pushed to their limits in trying to secure those heights, because this is really what the Confederates need for victory. They need to, I think it's either grab Cemetery Hill or Culp's Hill by the end of the second day. And so they're pushing everything in there, and you can see up here Hood's division is actually diverting to this area because it is so critical. at the same time, Sickles' Corps' presence up here has forced McLaw's division down here to sort of direct themselves in this area. Yes, there is this massive Confederate artillery battery around here, which the Union has been tempted to assault, but this is pretty good defensive ground here. Even with this artillery, with the bonus they'll get, it's going to be very hard to hit that artillery. Having said that, some of Johnson's men are beginning to move around to the right, and there's this race now for this peach orchard area. As you can see, Vincent's brigade moving up. We've got little round top and big round top over in the back, but it's the fact that Sickles' Corps got the jump on the Confederates down here, which has really brought the battle further to the west than it was historically. Again, just to reiterate, Reynolds' division is down to 1 strength point, 1, I think 1 and 1. Hancock, so there was a series of fighting around here. Hancock sent his corps in just before the US combat activation and forced the Confederates off the hill here, but also lost. In fact, they had 2 of their very fresh brigades shattered in the fight, and you can see those 2 pink units down the bottom. And because these units are already reduced from the previous day's fighting, some of these units, it's not hard for them to shatter once again. It's the same on the Confederate side. If we look over here at the Confederate shattered units, they've already had 8 units, well, a total of 8 units shatter, including most of Pender's division, part of Anderson's. Pettigrew didn't recover, and some of Dole's division there as well. Rhodes' division, sorry. Alright, so there we are, end of the 15th turn. It's about 10 a.m. But we do have quite a few Union reinforcements arriving over the next couple of turns. And given how close the fighting is, I just wonder how critical those reinforcements will be to shaping the tide of this battle. Alright, it's the end of the 16th turn. And again, more fighting on Cemetery Ridge, but a lot of fighting down here around Spangler's Hill, which saw one of Sickles' brigades shattered and another having to retreat off the hill. Further to the south, you'll notice Vincent's brigade down here advancing with other brigades of Sickles' Corps, some artillery there. Again, just seizing some important ground before the Confederates can reach it. And around in the centre here, Hancock again getting involved around Cemetery Ridge, but very late in the turn, in fact the last activation, Hood's division moved up, and actually they should be under some approach fire markers. They just moved up adjacent to Hancock's Corps. So there will be some very interesting, in fact, Slocum also advanced. This is part of this constant fight on the ridges, just back and forth, units rushing in, trying to seize it and occupy it to prevent enemy forces from doing so. Everything's very quiet out here in the east. Yeah, as I said, a lot of fighting around here. In fact, there was a line of... What happened first was Sickles, I think, initially advanced against this artillery up here. You can see McIntosh is being forced back, and that was when Anderson and McLaw's struck. They combined, and they drew... In fact, it was a US combat chit that was drawn, and they decided not to retreat while they're surrounded here. So they were actually shattered, the defenders that were there. So mixed combat throughout. The Confederates have succeeded in forcing the Union back. Technically, this is still Union control, because the Confederates didn't advance. 21-16, yep. It's very close throughout. The fighting throughout the lines has been incredibly close. I'm very interested to see what the victory point totals are going to be for the end of this day. This is only the third turn of this second day. It's the 16th turn. It's around 11:30 a.m. So there's still a lot of fighting to go. And as I said, we've got Hood's fresh division. We've got, who else is arriving? Sykes's 5th Corps is arriving from the north. What else is happening here? You've got some of Slocum's fresh men arriving in here. Hancock still has a lot of full strength brigades. The fighting continues. Okay, it's the end of the 17th turn. It's around 1 p.m. now. And fighting has continued all throughout the line. A lot of fighting around Cemetery Ridge. Basically, Hancock moved his corps up all along the Confederate line. It was a bit risky because these are all pretty weak brigades, and he suffered as a result. If you look again at the Union shattered forces, a lot of Hancock's recently arrived men are over there. They'd probably be better off on the defensive rather than trying to attack. They tried to push back this Confederate artillery out here. They tried to retake Spangler's Ridge and had failed. You can see some of them have sort of pulled back around this area. And in return, Hood's division have charged up. And this happened after both combat activations for the turn. But you can see here they're set for a fight. We've got some of, I think, Slocum's men have moved into the area. The recently arrived Slocum's men from his corps. I think the Confederates control most of Cemetery Ridge. If they can just push back, 1, 2, I think these are the 2 other remaining, actually just 1 victory point location. So that's just the one they need to grab, and then they hold Cemetery Ridge. Elsewhere again, quite out here, the Union have extended their line out around here. You can see, I think, some of Sickles' 3rd Corps have advanced down here. Ward's been pushing out to the right, down south. And the Union line is following. You can see Johnson's division shifting out to meet them. But at the moment, the Union controls some critical victory point locations in this area, here and here. You can see the fighting stretching out to the south. Now, there are no more Confederate reinforcements arriving this day. Pickett's division arrives in a couple of hours, but they won't have any effect on the fighting today. So this is what we have. There are some more Union troops to arrive. Sedgwick's 6th Corps is due to arrive from, I think, the east up here in a couple of turns. And of course, I assume they're going to be rushed to the defence around here. In fact, as I mentioned earlier, these are all one-strength brigades, so if Hood can really push hard here, they may be able to push back the Union forces and consolidate their position. They just need to... What's happening in combat is I'm failing a lot of these combat-based morale checks, which means that forces keep having to retreat. What Hood wants is for his troops to remain in this area, just to secure a hold on that high ground. Alright, so that's the end of the 17th turn, heading into the 18th shortly. Okay, we're at the end of the 18th turn. It is about 2:30 p.m. and there has been some, very important developments around Cemetery Ridge here. The Confederates have pushed the Union back and gained control of those 5 victory point locations. This is one of their end of day 2 victory requirements, securing those 5 locations and having more victory points, which is yet to be determined. But this is very important. These are not just, they haven't just gained control, they've gained control with some very strong brigades. You can see Anderson, Barksdale, some more troops behind the line. These are the men of Hood's division and McLaw's division, who are mostly very close to full strength. Now, not only that, the Union had a number of activations to challenge this control, but they are just too weak. These remaining brigades, I mentioned Reynolds in the past, and Howard's Corps out here, they're just too weak. Most of these are down to 1 or 2 effective strength points, and they cannot contest against the likes of 5 plus 2 morale, 6 plus 2 morale, 6 plus 1 morale, with decent artillery support in the area. And what's been happening over the past few turns is McLaw and Hood's divisions were sent into this area. They were shifting out to the right here. They diverted to this area really as a necessity, as all these Confederate brigades were being reduced in strength. This was not part of the earlier plan, but they've proved very effective. Their superior strength and morale against these already reduced Union forces in the area. Now, whilst they've done that, the Union have instead sent their forces further to the southwest. We saw Hancock's troops around here. You can see that Sykes has moved the brigades of his corps into this area, and they've been trying to gain control of these victory point locations. They saw this as a race to secure these areas, thinking, well, the Union thought they could hold on to Cemetery Ridge. They did send, of course, a lot of artillery, some of Hancock's men into the area. You can just see the Union shattered. How many of Hancock's troops have been shattered in such a short period of time. Some of Sickles' men into the area as well. You may recall they briefly held the heights and the victory point locations here. So the Union, as a Union player, felt that they could hold Cemetery Ridge whilst also gaining control of these locations. But whilst they've gained these locations out here in the south, they've lost now Cemetery Ridge. There is still quite a few turns, 4 turns left before the end of the day. Now, if the Union retain control of these, they both meet their objective requirements, and then it comes down to who I think has the most victory points. And I think it would be I'm just guessing here, a Union victory on that basis, because I think they have more units shattered. I think they have more units lost throughout here. They've really been rotating a lot of units throughout the Cemetery Ridge fighting in this area here. So at this stage, I think it's fair to say Confederates have the advantage in the battle with stronger, fresher forces. I think the Union's made a mistake by focusing too much on their attack out here on the left. Having said that, I think these are worth 10 victory points each, these Union victory point locations. So it could be close. Again, you may recall there was only 30 victory points differential at the end of the first day. So maybe if the Union can really hold control of these, they may still be, it may be close. Hancock has really wasted his corps, his brigades in his fighting around here with no success. Reynolds is now in trouble. His corps is pretty much in the fire. Now that the Union has secured control of this area, they can continue pushing and threaten the entire Union position. We'll see what happens, I guess, over the next 4 turns of fighting. It's now the end of the 19th turn, so we're just on 4 p.m. on this second day, and as you can see around here, Cemetery Ridge has really been secured by the Confederates. In fact, they're now moving on. They haven't moved up there, sorry, that's a bump. They're moving on Colts Hill. All of these units are down to 1 strength pretty much, whereas Hood's division is still quite strong. They've moved the artillery up on Cemetery Ridge. This turn saw the arrival of Sedgwick's 6th Corps. They brought 3 infantry brigades and artillery on behind Cemetery Ridge. That is kind of, I guess, the last hope for the Union, but I don't like their chances. The Confederates now hold all the high ground in this area, and they're in a good defensive position. So it's now up to the Union to try to force the Confederates off the high ground, which I don't think they're going to be able to do with what they're bringing onto the field. Fighting still continues out here on the far right. Confederates would just like to push the Union away from some of these victory point areas, just in case. I mean, I'm pretty confident the Confederates have more victory points, but it's a gamble if they let the Union hold on to at least 2 of these victory point markers. I think that's a victory condition. So they've tried to push around here. We've got Johnson's division trying to push around the right flank of that Union line. So it's looking very good for the Confederates at the end of this second day. We're heading to the 20th turn now. As I said, it's 4 p.m. and report back soon. Alright, we're 20 turns in now. It's about 5:30 p.m. There's only 2 turns left in this second day, but the arrival of Sedgwick's 6th Corps, you can see them coming along this road here, has really, I guess, boosted the morale of the Union troops. They've launched a new offensive back up Cemetery Hill, regained some of the high ground here, and in the process shattered Anderson and Law's brigades of Hood's division. Now, Benning is down to, I think, 1 step. Robertson is down to 1 step. So now the Confederates are really also putting up a thin line of defence. The Confederates were happy with the ground they've captured, and they were hoping to just hold and defend. But Sedgwick's fresh troops, they were brought in, picked off, as I said, Anderson and Law and some of these troops around the edge, some of the artillery, and did pretty well in combat. They've followed that up. Now Sickles and Sykes are moving in. Where did Sickles go? I think these are Sickles men. Sykes, and there's some of Sickles' brigades there. That's from the 3rd and the 5th Corps. You can see more of Sykes' 5th Corps men moving along Emmitsburg Road towards Cemetery Ridge, looking to strike it from the rear. So, they pull back. The Union are pulling back away from their left flank and driving along this road, trying to once again push the Confederates off that ridge and regain those victory point locations. They only need to secure 1. Actually, no, they need Culp's Hill as well, because I think that's a separate victory requirement if you control Culp's Hill. Nonetheless, we'll see what happens. We'll continue driving with those 2 corps and see how far they can push the Confederates back if they can. In the very least, they are causing a lot of damage, as I said, shattering 2 very strong and causing some strength point losses among those Confederate units. As I said, it's around 5:30, 2 more turns to go before the end of the day. Alright, it's the end of the 21st turn. This is around 7 p.m. It is the second last turn of the game, and look what has happened here. The Union have recaptured part of Cemetery Ridge. They briefly recaptured part of Culp's Hill as well. I think the unit there was eliminated. Well, massive fighting around this whole area here, Culp's Hill, Cemetery Hill. Sedgwick's 6th Corps drove straight into the middle. They were supported on their flanks by men from Sykes' 5th Corps. I think some of Sickles' men got involved as well. They threw a lot. I counted at the time there were 8 Union brigades fighting in this massive engagement versus 5 Confederate brigades all along this whole area. And while there were heavy casualties on both sides, I think the Confederates suffered the most damage in the exchange. And they actually failed a few morale checks from the combat. Some of them were forced to retreat. Most importantly, they've had to pull back off Cemetery Ridge. A large number now of Confederate shattered brigades. Again, still a lot of Union brigades out there as well. But perhaps most importantly, Hood's division is, well, that's all that's left. Robertson's brigade up there, they're pretty weak. One strength point remaining. Good morale. And they've just moved in there to re-secure Culp's Hill. We're heading to the last turn now, and the Confederates need to control these locations. I'll just double check the victory conditions again. So, Confederates control Little Round Top or Big Round Top? No. All 5 objectives on Cemetery Hill, or all 3 objectives on Culp's Hill. I think there should be an objective marker here. 1806, that is missing. So we've gone wandering off with one of the units. So I think this is an objective here. So the Confederates also need to control that, which they don't. I'm actually going to place this here because they haven't actually moved in there. That was last controlled by the Union. So the fighting is so tense around here, and what happened in this last turn is just to re-secure Culp's Hill. The Confederates moved in Robertson's brigade, and to secure part of Cemetery Ridge. You recall me saying how low Reynolds' call was. They sent Baxter's brigade back in with 1 strength point remaining, just to hold that area and prevent the Confederates from moving in. And even then, they've got a good brigade there, but they don't have much behind the line. In fact, Davis was sent back in to the lines with 2 strength points, just again to try and fight. He retreated. It is now all quiet out here on the right. Nothing happening out on the western side of the field. All the fighting is happening around here, and you can see some of these gaps in the Union line as they're drawing troops towards this fighting. All right, we're heading into the last turn now. The Union definitely control 2 or more objective hexes. Now, the Confederates got pretty confident that they had Cemetery Ridge, so they pulled back their attack down here. Now, it's heading to the last turn, they're going to have to... Well, here is 3 objective hexes, and I don't think they can push the Confederates away from those positions. I think they'll try, but give it a go. But yeah. All right, one more turn remaining on this second day. All right, here we are at the end of the second day. This is a situation at the end of turn 22. It's around 8:30 p.m. on the 2nd of July. And wow, a very intense back and forth around Little Round Top, with really the Union and the Confederacy sending just everything they could onto those heights. In the end, I think it's fair to say that the arrival of Sedgwick's full-strength corps was pretty decisive around here, and the reinforcement by Sykes' 5th Corps from down the southwest. They were critical, just in getting the slight upper hand over those slightly reduced and demoralised Confederate divisions. That's McLaw's division, the remnants of which you can see here, and Hood's division, which I think have all now been eliminated in that final series of combats. So what had happened was, as I said earlier, Hood and McLaws had pushed forward to the edge of the hill, had hoped to defend that high ground, but they couldn't do so against this overwhelming Union counterattack. And just over those last 2 turns, the Union managed to push them back. I'm, quite surprised at how effective Sedgwick's arrival was, and how well they pushed back up that high ground. Given the struggle the Confederates had around here to push the Union back, the Union seemed to do it relatively easily. Well, having said that, they haven't really gained the ground. They've just shattered a lot of those Confederate defenders who really stood their ground and defended stubbornly. Elsewhere, Johnson's division tried to. They launched a series of really desperate attacks against these 3 Union victory point locations. They needed to secure at least 2 of these, but those attacks failed pretty badly, in fact, and two of those brigades shattered in the process. Now, at the end of the second turn, we do a victory point check, and for this scenario, this full battle, the Confederates need to control Little Round Top and Big Round Top, which they don't. They need 5 objectives on Cemetery Hill, which they no longer have. They need 3 objectives on Culp's Hill, which they no longer have. So the Confederates don't win. Now, for the Union to win, they need to control 2 or more US objectives, which they do around here. They need to have more VPs than the CSA. Now, I've just done a victory point check. This is really quite lengthy and complicated, so let's go through it. So this is based, Union victory points is based on Confederate losses plus the 3 hexes they control. They get 10 victory points per US objective hex for 30 points. Confederate losses, 32 infantry and 7 artillery for a total of 184 points. They have shattered 99 strength points worth of Confederate infantry and 14 points worth of artillery for a total of 254 points. And they've demoralised a further 24 remaining on the board. That's relatively low because just in those final few hours, the Confederates were pushing all those reduced units in, so there aren't many more units left on the board. That gives the Union a total of 492 victory points. Now the Confederates, they inflicted more losses on the Union. 39 Union infantry and 7 cavalry and artillery. They shattered more infantry, 101 infantry points and 6 artillery and infantry, and they demoralised 41 units on the board. Now this is largely, it's a bit higher than the Confederates. They managed to pull their forces back, and again, as I've noted, Reynolds tried to pull his entire corps back out of the lines, only sending 1 or 2 back in towards the end to secure control of the Little Round Top, but otherwise not pushing too much in. Now this gives them a total of 479 points, which is so close, 13 points below the Union. So the Union control at least 2 objectives, and they have more victory points than the Confederates, so they win the battle at the end of this second day. But wow, how incredibly close this was. How close the Confederates came to. Well, as I said earlier, I thought they had secured Cemetery Ridge. I was pretty confident, and they began harassing the Union down here, just pushed them back away from that road. Well, things that we could have, and of course the Union made the mistake of sending Sykes's corps down here, and then they rediverted critically up here. So you can see a few of Sykes's divisions in this area where they played really such a key role in resecuring those VP locations, striking the Confederates on this right flank over here. The Confederates, I think, did very well to send Hood and McLaw's division around here, but maybe they should have also sent Johnson as well. Because, and the reason for this is, let the Union have their VPs, because in their constant fighting around Cemetery Ridge, in their struggle to retain control, they were up against superior forces once Sedgwick and Sykes arrived, and then they were sending in their already reduced units. So I think the lesson here is, and I'm still learning lessons, is really to pull back those demoralised brigades before they get shattered. Because once they become shattered, it's they're worth twice as many victory points. So let's look at. So this is lost units. The Confederates scored more losses the Union scored more shattered, which I was surprised. You saw, this is the Confederate shattered units box, and it is much higher than it was just a couple of turns ago. Once these units start to lose demoralization, I think it's safe to pull them out of the line before they become shattered, because you're just giving your opponent victory points then. And then I'll pan around, and here's the Union shattered box. Still quite high, but they actually haven't lost all that much in the last few turns. Most of the losses have come from the Confederates driving against these strong Union defensive positions, and these were bad attacks, really. Johnson's division was going in outnumbered, and then this desperate Confederate struggle to regain Cemetery Ridge was involved them sending in all these reduced, demoralized units, so close to being shattered. As I mentioned, Pettigrew went back in the line. Archer went back in the line. Rose's division was sent back into the line. Rose's division is completely shattered. They're non-existent. Who else? Hood's division is gone. He has no more presence on the board. Just the fact that they sent in so many men time and time again really end up costing them victory points. So that's the end of, I guess, another battle of Gettysburg from Eric Lee Smith's Battle Hymn Volume 1. It is a great system. Brilliant for solo play. Just the chit draw mechanism. I did use the at random rules. So when units split fire, you don't get to determine where they're sending their fire. They do it randomly. It plays very smoothly, very, very smoothly. Easy to understand, easy to follow, easy to pick up and run with. And the battle plays out very tensely as we kept seeing the arrival of fresh, new reinforcements and sending them into line was critical for both sides. And every time those new troops came in, it shaped the battle in a different way. And of course, I'm still learning, as I said, needing to pull back those troops. Maybe the Confederates should have. I mean, this fighting has been going on every hour of this second day. Maybe the Confederates should have pulled back, picked their targets, and sent in their stronger brigades. In any case, that is the end of the battle, and just a reminder: a Union victory.